Hi, I'm Chef Alan Tatro with Global Sugar Art. One of the popular desserts or table centerpieces for the holidays is called a Yule log or bûche de Noël. And normally that's like a rolled cake with a chocolate icing and it's decorated. I've reconstructed that this year and we're doing a birch log cake with a chocolate drizzle. Now this is encompassing some very popular things. Right now the drip cake, or any cake that has some sort of a fondant or a ganache or an icing drip on it, is really popular. So I'm going to show you how to do this cake and how to make this birch bark effect on a cake. For this cake today, I've used 3 6-inch layers, and I baked the cakes in the 6-inch pans. And after they were out of the oven and they cooled, I put the cake back in and I sliced right across the top. And that gave me 3 perfect 2-inch layers that were nice and flush on the top. So I've stacked these with some buttercream in between, and I've just done a quick crumb coat. And now I'm going to ice the outside with buttercream. This is my favorite way of icing a cake. It's quick and it's easy. This tip is a Wilton tip. It's called the Quick Icer. We'll get the number for you, the exact number of the tip. What I love about this is after you've done a crumb coat, this doesn't bring up any crumbs from the spatula when you're trying to add more icing on the cake. And we'll spread this on the top. These tall cakes can be a little wobbly, so go easy with them. I'm using the Alan Tatro buttercream. This is a crusting buttercream, which means that after it sets for maybe 20 or 30 minutes, it does get a very thin crust on it so that you can smooth it really easily. And I'm going to use a smoother on the side. Now, unlike a regular decorated cake, I'm not worried about a really, really smooth finish here. I want this to look like a tree trunk, like a birch log. So I don't want it really smooth. There. Now for the top, because I'm going to be pouring a fudge icing over here and I want a nice smooth top, I do want the top smooth. So I'm going to do the best I can to get this nice and smooth. And we actually can use a little piece of paper and a fondant smoother after this sets for a few minutes, and we can smooth it some more. Okay, for the birch effect, I've used brown gel food coloring, and I've just put a little dot of the food coloring in a dish, and I'm using a small paintbrush and a little bit of water, and I'm just going to thin that a little bit and then just make little streaks all over the cake. Just vary them in place, different places, so they don't look even, different lengths. And then you can do, you see how there's a little gap in the icing right there? Because I didn't want a perfectly smooth finish. This actually works for you in this case, and this is why I did that. You can make sort of an eye in there, like you see on a real birch tree. So just make an eye shape. So use those little divots that you have to your advantage. Now, because you're working on fresh buttercream, you do have to keep the paintbrush fairly wet with food coloring. So I'm going to make a couple of those eyes. And then I'm just going to go back around and put more of the dark lines in. Okay, so that's getting there. Let's put one up here toward the top. So now I'm going to use a palette knife, and I'm going to have a paper towel handy so that I keep this really clean. I'm just going to dip this in water, and I'm going to sort of drag it through in one direction and then the other. And then wipe it, and then just do this in different places. Even on the white, it doesn't have to be through the color. I'm just sort of roughing up the bark. I'm just adding some dimension to the cake. Kind of, because when you look at birch bark, it's actually curled. The bark curls off the tree. So what I'm trying to do is imitate that effect. So you can see this is like a super easy technique that anybody can do. So I've just roughed this up a little bit. I've added the color. I'm going to go ahead and finish this, and then I'm going to show you how to put the chocolate drip on there. Now today we're going to be using a silk fudge icing. This is Alan Tetro's silky fudge icing. You can use chocolate ganache, the silky fudge icing, and I'm also told what works really well is just a can of chocolate icing that you can get in the grocery store, and you can heat it up and you can use that as a drizzle as well. I'm going to go ahead and finish this, and then we're going to do that drip effect. To get the nice smooth finish on the top, like I said earlier, this is a crusting buttercream, and I've let it dry for a few minutes, and I can just touch it and it won't stick to my hands. So I'm just putting a piece of paper, and I'm using a fondant smoother, and I'm just lightly going over the top to smooth it. This just gives a smoother look to the icing that we're going to drip over the top. And that's really all I want. It's not a lot. So I have the fudge icing, and I put this in the microwave for about 5 or 10 seconds at a time. And this is the consistency I'm looking for. What we do now is we're going to move this cake to a rack so that the icing, if it drips down over the edge, it will fall through the rack. Okay, we want to make sure that this is the right consistency, and it is. If it looks like you just want to jump in, it's ready. So what I'm going to do is just pour this in the middle, and then just use my spoon, and I'm just going to bring it to the very edge, and then it will go down the edge by itself. And we're going to put some more on. There. And that's it. And we're just going to let that drip down the cake. We'll let it set for a few minutes, and then we'll take it off. We'll put it on our serving platter, and we'll decorate it. And while this is setting, we're going to make some pine cones out of buttercream. To make the pine cones, I'm using some of our 1/4-inch poly dowels, and I'm just going to cut them about 3, 4 inches. Now I'm making these out of buttercream today. If you want to make these ahead to do more cakes, or just to make them easier to work with, you can make them out of royal icing. Or I made these out of the crusting buttercream, but I made them a couple days ago, and I actually can touch those now, and they've hardened enough that I'll be able to work with them quite easily. But they are buttercream. So I put some chocolate or brown icing in a pastry bag with a 103 tip. You can use a 101, 102, or 103, depending on how large a pine cone you want to make. This is very similar to piping a rose on a stick or a skewer, if you've ever done that. I'm just going to put a little bit of icing on the top, and then I'm going to make 3 little petals going up. And that's the top. And then I just go down a little bit, and I'm just going to make a row of petals, just like you would a rose. It actually starts looking like a little rose, but because we're coming straight down and it's not getting wider at the bottom, it'll look like a pine cone. So again, I'm just making little rows of very small petals, and just keep coming down on those. coming down the poly dowel. And we'll put one more row. So again, the only difference between this and piping a rose is a rose has a wider base. The petals are made the same, but it's all the same diameter as it goes down the poly dowel. That's how you make a pine cone out of buttercream. And just put them in a styrofoam and let them dry. I would at least let them dry overnight so that they're easier to use and they're easier to put on the cake and place where you want to place. And that's the pine cone. To finish the cake, I've used the Karen Davies mold, and I've molded some green gum paste, or you can use a 50-50 mix of fondant and gum paste together. Now, when you have a mold like this that has very small, deep cuts, sometimes when you push that gum paste in there, even if you freeze it for 5 or 10 minutes, when you go to pull it out, sometimes some of that gum paste will stay in there. So what I do on a mold like this is I take a little piece of green gum paste and I roll it into a ball and then into a cylinder, and then I just very lightly put a little bit of shortening on it, a little bit of Crisco or some sort of a vegetable fat, and then I push it in. Just a very light coat will help pull that right out of the mold. So this one is ready to come out, and you can see that pops right out. So I have some pieces all together. I've also started by taking some red gum paste. I'm using the Satin Ice gum paste, and I made some little balls, and I just use a little bit of gum glue. You can use like a Tylose glue, or you can use the pre-purchased gum glue. And if you brush them with a little bit of glue, they'll keep that nice shine. So let's put this cake together now. I have to decide where I want my front. And then I'm going to put let's see, I'm going to grab my icing. I'm just going to use a little bit of this chocolate icing that I had for the pine cones to stick these on. Using these molds really made this a really fun and simple project. I'm going to break off a little bit of this because I don't want it that full length. And we'll do one more. There. And now the pine cones, you can use a pliers or tweezers, anything you want, and just push those right in. Let me get my... There we go. And then if you want to just add a couple of the little berries. I put them on toothpicks so they would dry. Just for a little bit of color. And then on this side, I'm going to use one of the pre-made gum paste poinsettias that we sell. You can just move the petals around and get them so that just the way you want them to look. Decide where you want to put it in. And I've wrapped the back with a little bit of foil, or you actually can push it in a straw first and then put that in, so that way the wires are not directly touching the food. And there you have my my new version of a bûche de Noël or a Yule log using the Birch technique and the drip technique, and then adding the pine cones and the poinsettia. And I want to show you one last thing. This is one I made before, and the difference is this one used the chocolate ganache, which is a thinner product, and it dripped down all the way. This one we're using a fudge icing, which is a heavier product. It doesn't drip quite like this one does. It gives you two different looks. They're both delicious. This would be a great, great dessert on any holiday table. And it really is very, very easy to make. I hope you've enjoyed this video. All the products are available at globalsugarart.com, and thanks for watching.